Hello, good morning, afternoon, or evening. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a computer in PC Building Simulator. And before we get into it, I just want to cover 3 concerns that may come up when you are building your computer. 1. Before you even purchase the parts, make sure that everything is compatible and works together. Because the last thing you want to do is order something and have it not work with your other parts. So always double check that. 2. Make sure to be extremely careful when handling the parts because they are super fragile and can easily break. So just make sure you're handling them with care. And 3. In this video, I'm going to be using PC Building Simulator, which is a bit different than actually building a computer in real life. So there will be some differences, and when those come up, I will make sure to point them out in the video. Before you start building your computer, you're going to need a few resources before we start. You're going to need a couple small Phillips head screwdrivers. You're going to need the required parts to build a PC. Those being a CPU, which is kind of the brain of the computer, the motherboard, which connects everything together, the RAM, which is the short-term memory, the graphics card, which provides the visuals for everything, the storage, which is the long-term memory, the power supply, which provides power to the rest of the parts, and the case, which provides a place to store all of your parts. And with all that being said, let's get right into the video. So, now that we are in PC Building Simulator, we're going to get right to building the computer. Now, the first big difference between this game and real life is that the parts already come out of the box. So just assume that I have already taken everything out of their respective boxes and laid them out to be installed. Now, for the first step, we're going to be taking this front side panel off of your case, off of the computer. So normally there'd be a couple screws on the side. They can just screw right out and the panel should just come right off. And that should open up the case to allow you to put your parts inside. Now, one major difference between the game and real life, as I mentioned previously, were the boxes. And this is where one big part is going to come into play. So when you're starting out, you want to start with your motherboard because that connects everything to the rest of the parts. And how I recommend doing it is by putting the motherboard on top of the cardboard box that it came in, as a picture here. Now in the game, I'm going to put it immediately into the case. And what I just did was you have to put in a certain amount of standoffs. It might come pre-installed in the case, depending on which one you get. But they might come pre-installed, so you just have to line it up with the standoffs in the computer and put the screws in just to make sure the motherboard is secure and in place. Now that you have your motherboard in place, we can do the CPU. The CPU is going to be put in under this little shield here, or a arm, depending on what kind of motherboard you have. Now, the arm you'll have to press out and raise, and the shield you'll have to remove that little lever and raise it up. This allows for there to be room to put your CPU in. Now, the CPU has to be a certain type on your CPU, right here, the little triangle, and there'll be a matching triangle on your motherboard. And you're going to want to line those up to make sure that it's going in the right direction. And when you do this, it should slide and fit right into place in that socket. And you're just going to want to close the shield or little arm and to secure it into place. Now, the next step is going to be to install your RAM. So when you're installing your RAM, there's going to be these 4 slots, normally to the right of your CPU. Now, in these 4 slots, I would either like to use this first and third slot, or the second and fourth slot. If you are using 2 sticks of RAM, it's very technical, but it technically makes your performance better, but for just a regular computer, it doesn't matter too much. Now, I'm going to be using the second and fourth slot in this demo. So you're just going to get your RAM. Hold on, let me just pull it up here. Here we go, just use this one. You'll just open these tabs on the end, and you should just be able to slide it right in, and there will be a little click, and that will confirm that it's in place and works. Now that we have our RAM in place, we're going to install the CPU cooler. There are actually 2 steps, or a few steps, but 2 main steps to installing the computer. First, you're going to need a bit of thermal paste, which is pretty much just a little metallic gel that helps conduct the heat between your CPU and the cooler. So the cooler could either be this water cooler, which I won't be using because it's very advanced, or the one that you will most likely have is just a fan. And what you do is you take your CPU cooler, and there would be instructions in the box, and there'll be certain brackets that you have to put into place to attach the cooler to the motherboard without damaging it. And you'll just put it down on top, making sure the heat pads touch, just to make sure the heat transfers well, and you just screw it into place. Your CPU cooler would then be installed. Now that you've gotten your CPU cooler in place and everything else is attached to your motherboard, we're going to be transferring it over to your case, if you haven't already. And just as I did before, you'll be putting in the stand-ups and lining it up with the motherboard just to make sure it can't move. Now, once your motherboard is installed in your computer, we're going to install your GPU. So your GPU is going to go in these sockets here. And you will have to move this little clip outwards to be able to install your GPU. But before you do that, there are these little parts on the side, little fans or vents. And you'll have to take out the certain ones that make it so it lines up with your GPU. So it should go just like that. Lines up with the little socket and with the outside of the parts you just took off, and you just screw it into place to make sure it doesn't come out. Now that we have our GPU installed, we're going to move on to the storage. Now, there are 3 different kinds of storage. There are hard drives, which are bigger and more sustainable than SSDs. And then there are the SSDs, which are faster storage, which gets things move faster, but are more prone to breaking due to the high speed of data transfer. And there are M.2 drives, which install directly to the motherboard and are probably the best quick storage. And I'll be showcasing all of these here now. So we're going to start with our M.2 drives, which look somewhat like this, just like a little chip, and they install directly on your motherboard. There should be a couple slots for M.2 drives. Some of them may be under your graphics card, but they should have a second one that is in the open. So what you do is you stick it right into this little socket, and there's a little screw on the end where you slide it in and screw it in. It's pretty simple and pretty easy to install. The next one we're going to be doing are your regular SSDs. These normally have a slot right on the top of the bottom of the case, so you can just slide them in, and that's all you really need to do. Just slide them into the slots and they should stay in place. And now for the last piece of storage, which are the hard drives. These, depending on the case, are normally stored in the back. So we will have to remove this back side panel. And they go in this little drive bay down here. Let me just grab one real quick. Here we go. And it should install right here. Normally, there would be a little bay that you can just pull out, slide it in, and then push it back. But this one, you just put it right in. It's easy as that. And now for the last major part of your computer, the power supply. Now the power supply will also go in the back side of your computer, and it would go right here. There will be this little bracket on the side of most of your computers that you will have to take out to put your power supply in, but I have already removed it for this case. Now, in order to install your power supply, you'd have to take out that previously mentioned bracket, and you'll just take your power supply, slide it in so this plug is facing outwards, and you'll just screw it in, whether you have to put the bracket back or just straight into the computer. You just screw it in there, and now it won't be able to move. And it's properly positioned so the power can come in and it can disperse it throughout the rest of your computer. Now that you have your parts installed, we're going to be getting to a harder part of building a computer, which are the cables. Now, the cables vary a lot from computer to computer. And unfortunately, this game doesn't get super in-depth with the cabling, so I'll try and do a brief overview of how the cables work. Each cable should have some sort of connection to your power supply. For example, this hard drive plugs in right here to your power supply. Each part should have something like that, like the SSD, your GPU, and your motherboard will all have some sort of connection down to your power supply. And a lot of the other accessory parts, like your fans and some of your storage devices, will have slots that are on your motherboard, and they are outlined in your motherboard's owner's manual. They'll show what each port is and what plugs into it, and it will show what fans go where and what hard drives and SSDs go where. And there are a few things you'll need to start turning on your computer. One will be a operating system, such as Windows or the Mac for the Apple computers. And you'll just have to have a little drive or code that you can use to download it to the computer. Next, you'll have to plug it in using the cord provided with your power supply to an outlet and the cords required for the monitor and your mouse and keyboard. When you plug all those in and press the power button, it should load up into some sort of a screen, whether it's for your motherboard or the operating system. It should load up. If not, you'll have to go back and make sure you plugged everything in correctly and that all the parts are installed. And there you have it, how to build a computer in PC Building Simulator, and most of the way to build one in real life. There are a few things that can't quite be explained and hard to show without doing it by hand, but you should know the basics of where your parts go, what the cables are for, and what they all do. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day.